Have you ever noticed how some people keep making the same mistakes, stumbling over the same choices, even though we live in an age overflowing with information? The most curious, and honestly a bit uncomfortable, truth is that the Bible, especially in Proverbs, has revealed for centuries the shortcuts and warnings that could prevent 90% of the problems we face today. And here's the paradox: we have more technology than ever, yet we've never been so blind to the wisdom Solomon recorded. If you feel like something is missing, direction, clarity, purpose, it might be because you're ignoring exactly what God placed right in front of you. Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe to the channel right now, because this content will unlock areas of your life you didn't even realize needed change. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos, and get ready. What you're about to discover can shift your emotional, spiritual, and even financial perspective. Biblical history is filled with warnings that transform destinies, and today you begin accessing that wisdom on the deepest level. The first warning from Proverbs appears in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10, when Solomon declares that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Within the biblical history, this fear is not terror, but reverence, awareness, and respect for the greatness of God. This principle functions as the starting point for anyone who desires to live with discernment. Before any decision is made, the heart is invited to acknowledge that it cannot see everything alone. And Proverbs presents this reverence as an invisible yet indispensable foundation. This same principle appears repeatedly in the Bible as a sign of maturity. Proverbs shows that wisdom is born when a person admits the need for the guidance of God to walk in balance. Solomon explains that those who ignore this principle end up relying only on impulses, opinions, or daily distractions. And when that happens, the risk of falling into impulsive choices multiplies. Thus, the fear of the Lord becomes a kind of inner compass guiding each step. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, another reinforcement of this understanding emerges. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This passage functions as an extension of the first warning from Proverbs. Solomon explains that relying solely on one's own logic is insufficient. The biblical history shows that wise decisions result from a combination of human discernment and divine direction. And when this combination occurs, choices that were once confusing become clearer. Within this principle, Proverbs reveals that true wisdom is practical. It is not memorized knowledge, but applied knowledge. Solomon writes in the Bible as someone who understands the complexities of human behavior. He shows that those who fear God develop the ability to perceive nuances, intentions, and paths that are not always obvious. This sensitivity helps avoid emotional, spiritual, and even professional losses. And this understanding begins precisely with this reverent fear. The biblical history makes it clear that many stumble not because they lack information, but because they ignore divine counsel. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 29, it is recorded that some reject wisdom because they reject the fear of the Lord. This warning reinforces the danger of living based only on self-confidence. Solomon demonstrates that neglecting this principle opens doors to disordered decisions, and this type of neglect produces consequences that could have been avoided with humility. This fear also influences the way a person interprets life's situations. Proverbs shows that someone who reveres God can see beyond appearances. In Proverbs chapter 2, verse 5, Solomon says that those who seek wisdom understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. This understanding deepens a person's perception of reality. Choices begin to be evaluated not only by their immediate impact, but by their long-term effects, and that brings stability. Another important point is that the fear of the Lord brings protection. In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 27, it is written, "The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life." This phrase indicates that divine reverence is not a burden, but a shield. Solomon teaches that those who honor God develop a sharper sense of risks and influences around them. Thus, impulsive decisions are avoided, and the heart learns to walk with more prudence and less anxiety. Proverbs also highlights that this fear brings direction in confusing environments. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6, it says, "Acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will make your paths straight." The biblical history confirms that this divine guidance operates behind the scenes, organizing what the human eye cannot perceive. Solomon explains that when someone submits their path to God, they find safer routes. and life becomes less heavy and easier to understand. Finally, this chapter of Proverbs builds the foundation for the warnings that follow. The fear of the Lord is not merely the beginning, it is the principle that sustains every other teaching. Solomon makes this clear in the Bible by showing that wisdom results from a partnership between human humility and divine guidance. And when this foundation is firm, it becomes natural to move into the next essential theme, the power of what comes out of one's mouth and the weight those words carry. In Proverbs, Solomon presents profound teachings about the power of words, beginning with what is written in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. The Bible shows that speech is never neutral. It always builds or destroys. That is why biblical history repeatedly emphasizes the importance of speaking with wisdom. Everything a person says leaves marks, and recognizing this impact completely changes the way one communicates. Solomon also emphasizes in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 3 that he who guards his mouth preserves his life. Proverbs makes it clear that verbal self-control is spiritual, emotional, and even social protection. The Bible presents the tongue as a powerful tool, capable of generating conflict or bringing peace. Therefore, guarding one's words is not weakness, but strength. And whoever understands this begins to speak less in order to think more. Another important teaching appears in Proverbs chapter 15, verse 1, where Solomon states that a gentle answer turns away wrath. This verse shows that tone of voice can be more decisive than the content of the speech itself. Proverbs reinforces that calmness disarms tension far more effectively than aggression. Biblical history records many moments where a simple adjustment in someone's response changed entire situations. And such posture reveals maturity. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 28, we read that, "Even a fool is considered wise when he keeps silent." This principle shows that silence, when used with discernment, becomes a tool of protection. Solomon indicates that knowing when not to speak is just as important as knowing what to say. Proverbios highlights that not every situation deserves an immediate answer, and many times, silence preserves relationships, emotions, and decisions. Proverbs also warns about gossip, as seen in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 19, which says, "A gossip betrays a confidence." Solomon exposes that gossip destroys trust and generates division in environments that could otherwise be healthy. The Bible consistently condemns this behavior because it weakens bonds and creates unsafe atmospheres. Biblical history shows that poorly intentioned words cause deep wounds, and avoiding this habit is a sign of wisdom. In addition, lying is treated firmly in Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22, it is written, "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord." Solomon highlights that verbal dishonesty harms not only people, but also one's relationship with God. Biblical history shows that truth is always valued, even when it hurts or demands courage. And this integrity in speech strengthens character and credibility. Wisdom always walks alongside truth. Solomon also highlights the restorative power of words in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 24, where he says, "Pleasant words are like a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones." Proverbs teaches that communication can heal, comfort, and bring relief. The Bible repeatedly shows that wise speech brings healing where invisible wounds exist, and this type of language transforms relationships and environments. Speaking with balance is an act of love. In Proverbs chapter 10, verse 19, we read that, "In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking." This principle reinforces the importance of measuring words before using them. Solomon makes it clear that excessive talk often brings avoidable problems. Biblical history confirms that wisdom is not expressed in quantity, but in precision and purpose. Therefore, Proverbs teaches that speaking little and speaking well brings safety, and this approach avoids unnecessary strain. All these teachings show that Proverbs considers the tongue one of the greatest forces in human life. The way someone speaks reveals character, maturity, and relationship with God. Solomon builds a continuous warning in the Bible. Speaking without thinking brings pain, but speaking with wisdom brings life. And as these teachings about words deepen, another theme begins to emerge: the impact of the companions and friendships that shape the heart. In Proverbs, Solomon warns about the power of the influences that surround us. In Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20, it is written, "He who walks with the wise shall be wise, but the companion of fools shall suffer harm. The Bible reveals that friendships can shape behaviors, decisions, and even destinies. Biblical history confirms that the right people strengthen, while the wrong people mislead. Therefore, choosing who walks alongside you is an act of spiritual wisdom. This principle appears throughout Proverbs. Solomon makes it clear that relationships are never neutral, they always generate impact. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 24, we find the instruction, "Make no friendship with an angry man." The Bible shows that explosive temperaments influence those around them. Thus, Proverbs encourages examining character before forming deep bonds. And this kind of discernment protects the heart. Proverbs also highlights that friendships can lead toward good paths or dangerous ones. In Proverbs chapter 1, verses 10 through 15, Solomon warns about people who encourage destructive or unjust behaviors. Biblical history records many tragedies rooted in reckless companionships. Therefore, wisdom consists in recognizing when someone is pulling you away from God and keeping distance from such invitations disguised as friendship. Another important point is emotional influence. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 26, it says, "The righteous is a guide to his neighbor." Here, Solomon reveals that healthy friendships bring balance to the heart. The Bible shows that unjust friendships, on the other hand, create confusion, hurt, and inner turbulence. Proverbs teaches that the righteous illuminate paths, while the unjust distort choices. And this understanding helps build safe relationships. In Proverbs chapter 14, verse 7, we find direct counsel, "Go from the presence of a foolish man." Solomon makes it clear that insisting on harmful relationships drains life and distances a person from wisdom. Biblical history reminds us that foolish individuals generate tension, chaos, and impulsive decisions. That is why Proverbs encourages strategic distancing, and such distance is not rejection, but protection. The Book of Proverbs also highlights the importance of friendships that strengthen character. In Proverbs chapter 27, verse 17, it is written, "Iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend." Solomon teaches that true friendships challenge, guide, and push each other toward growth. The Bible shows that such relationships produce genuine development, and this dynamic reflects God's intention for healthy connections. Another warning from Proverbs appears in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 28. "A perverse man sows strife." Solomon indicates that malicious people create division where peace could flourish. Biblical history shows how healthy environments can be destroyed by toxic words and attitudes. Therefore, wisdom lies in identifying divisive behavior and in protecting the heart against such influence. Proverbs also reinforces the value of faithful friendships. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 17, it says, "A friend loves at all times." Solomon shows that true friendship remains steady in adversity and celebrates in joy. The Bible reveals that such people are gifts from God for strengthening the soul. Biblical history confirms that loyalty is a mark of relationships aligned with divine purpose, and cultivating such friendships is a daily choice. All these teachings from Proverbs show that friendships shape character, decisions, and future. Solomon emphasizes that the right companions draw you closer to God, while the wrong ones distance you from wisdom. The Bible reveals that relationships influence more than we often notice. And as these lessons highlight the weight of human connections, another theme begins to emerge: the contrast between laziness and diligence in the building of a solid life. In Proverbs, Solomon presents a series of warnings about laziness and the value of diligence. In Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6, he declares, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise." The Bible uses the image of the ant as a symbol of initiative, discipline, and foresight. Biblical history confirms that God honors those who act with responsibility, and this principle highlights that wisdom does not coexist with complacency. Another teaching appears in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4, where it is written, "A lazy hand makes for poverty, but the diligent hand brings wealth." Proverbs reveals that results are direct fruits of effort and consistency. Solomon shows that laziness not only delays progress, but creates cycles of stagnation. The Bible presents diligence as a tool for growth and honor, and this discipline transforms small actions into great achievements. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 24, Solomon states that, "The hand of the diligent will rule." This principle shows that dedication opens doors, while negligence closes opportunities. Proverbs emphasizes that leadership is built through consistent work. The Bible reinforces that God values commitment and excellence, and those who develop this habit become trustworthy for greater responsibilities. Proverbs also exposes the consequences of procrastination. In Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4, we read, "The sluggard will not plow because of winter, therefore he shall beg during harvest and have nothing." Solomon points out that seemingly logical excuses often hide a lack of initiative. Biblical history shows that those who wait for perfect conditions end up doing nothing. And this warning teaches the importance of acting even when the scenario is not ideal. Another important point appears in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5. "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance." Here, Solomon reveals that planning is an essential part of wisdom. Proverbs shows that effort without direction leads to weariness, but well-directed effort leads to progress. The Bible reinforces that God values organization and good stewardship, and this transforms goals into consistent results. In Proverbs chapter 24, verses 30 and 31, we find a powerful image, an abandoned field overgrown with thorns. Solomon uses this scene to illustrate what happens when laziness dominates a life. Biblical history reveals that neglect opens the door to loss, disorder, and wasted opportunities. Proverbs teaches that lack of diligence weakens even what once seemed promising, and this warning encourages vigilance and perseverance. Diligence, according to Proverbs, is also a practical expression of honoring God. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 3, it says, "Commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established." Solomon points out that devoted work and spirituality are not rivals, but allies. The Bible shows that God blesses hands that work with purpose and integrity, and this partnership between faith and effort produces lasting fruit. The theme of discipline appears again in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 23. "In all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty." Proverbs distinguishes intention from action. Talking about goals does not accomplish them.
Solomon teaches that progress requires movement and perseverance. Biblical history confirms that God honors concrete steps, and this truth inspires one to keep progressing even when the process is challenging. All these teachings show that, according to Proverbs, diligence is more than effort, it is wisdom applied. The Bible reveals that committed hands build, while lazy hands lose what they already have. Solomon presents work as an opportunity for growth and an expression of faithfulness. And as this principle becomes clear, another warning begins to emerge: the danger of pride and the value of humility in shaping character. In Proverbs, Solomon offers strong warnings about the danger of pride. In Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, he declares, "Pride goes before destruction." The Bible shows that pride blinds, distorts perception, and opens the door to reckless decisions. Biblical history records leaders and nations that fell because of arrogance, and this principle reveals that, to God, pride is a silent enemy of growth. Another important warning appears in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 23. "A man's pride will bring him low, but the humble in spirit will obtain honor." Solomon shows that humility does not diminish anyone. Instead, it creates room for elevation. Proverbs explains that those who walk humbly avoid conflict, learn more, and grow steadily. The Bible confirms that God exalts those who recognize their limitations, and such posture opens doors that pride closes. In Proverbs chapter 27, verse 2, we read, "Let another praise you, and not your own mouth." This principle confronts vanity and self-promotion. Solomon teaches that true value is naturally recognized without the need for loud self-exaltation. Proverbs makes it clear that those who chase attention lose credibility. Biblical history shows that true greatness never depends on self-glorification, and this strengthens character. Proverbs also warns about integrity. In Proverbs chapter 19, verse 1, it says, "Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than one who is perverse in his lips and is a fool." Solomon highlights that character is worth more than any momentary advantage. The Bible affirms that God honors those who choose truth even when it costs something. Biblical history confirms that integrity sustains the future, and righteous choices build unshakable foundations. Another key point appears in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 2. When pride comes, then comes shame. This teaching reinforces that arrogance always brings consequences, even if delayed. Solomon shows that arrogant behavior drives away people, opportunities, and even divine guidance. Proverbs demonstrates that humility is protection, not weakness. And understanding this shapes a more stable and wise life. In Proverbs chapter 10, verse 9, we find another essential instruction. He who walks with integrity walks securely. Solomon highlights that honesty prevents fear, lies, and hidden anxiety. The Bible reveals that God guides and guards those who walk in transparency. Biblical history shows that those who choose truth remain firm even in difficult times. And this strengthens trust and credibility. Proverbs also warns against manipulation. In Proverbs chapter 12, verse 22, it is written, "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord." Solomon reveals that manipulating facts, emotions, or words breaks one's relationship with God. The Bible condemns deceit in all its forms. Biblical history shows that falsehood always demands a high price, and this warning reinforces the value of authenticity. The theme of humility returns in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 34, where it says that God gives grace to the humble. Solomon explains that grace means favor, strength, and wisdom that come from above. Proverbs shows that humility attracts what pride repels. The Bible makes it clear that those who humble themselves before God receive guidance and strength, and this posture opens the path to continuous growth. All these teachings reveal that, for Proverbs, character is worth more than appearance. Solomon shows that humility, integrity, and truth build a solid life. The Bible highlights that God honors those who cultivate a sincere heart, and as these virtues shape the inner life, another theme begins to emerge: the wise use of riches and the dangers of greed. In Proverbs, Solomon makes it clear that wealth without wisdom becomes a trap. In Proverbs chapter 28, verse 20, he teaches, "A faithful man will abound with blessings, but he who hastens to be rich will not go unpunished." The Bible shows that financial haste leads to serious mistakes and careless decisions. Biblical history reveals that economic impulses have destroyed families and kingdoms, and this warning reinforces that prosperity requires patience and awareness. Another teaching appears in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 8. "Better is a little with righteousness than great revenues without justice." Solomon shows that inner peace is worth more than unjust earnings. Proverbs teaches that wealth obtained through questionable means brings restlessness and heaviness to the soul. The Bible affirms that God honors honest gain. And this perspective transforms the way someone views their own money. In Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, we read, "The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Solomon uses this principle to warn about the danger of debt. Proverbs reveals that excessive debt restricts freedom and jeopardizes the future. Biblical history confirms that financial bondage always begins with small decisions, and this insight encourages prudence before entering any commitment. Another important point appears in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 28. "He who trusts in his riches will fall." Here, Solomon confronts the illusion of security in money. Proverbs states that true stability comes from God, not from accumulated numbers. The Bible records examples of wealthy people who collapsed because they relied on their own strength. And this warning helps keep the heart aligned with the right purpose. In Proverbs chapter 13, verse 11, we find the instruction, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase." Solomon teaches that healthy financial growth is gradual. Proverbs challenges impulsive mindsets and magical solutions. Biblical history reinforces that God blesses honest and consistent processes, and this approach creates strong, sustainable roots in practical life. Another essential warning appears in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 26. Do not be one of those who shakes hands in a pledge. Solomon advises avoiding financial responsibilities that exceed one's control. Proverbs shows that guaranteeing others' debts can lead to unexpected losses. The Bible presents prudence as part of true wisdom, and this careful posture protects relationships and emotional stability. The theme of generosity also stands out in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25. The generous soul will be made rich. Solomon shows that generosity does not impoverish, it multiplies. Proverbs teaches that those who give live with more lightness and purpose. Biblical history reveals that God honors hearts that bless others, and this attitude creates connections that money can never buy. In Proverbs chapter 15, verse 16, it is written, "Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble with it." Solomon reinforces that wealth without peace is not true wealth. Proverbs points out that spiritual balance is worth more than any material possession. The Bible shows that God does not condemn prosperity, but aligns the heart to use it with purpose. And this perspective reshapes one's relationship with material things. All these teachings make Proverbs function as a divine financial manual. Solomon shows that economic choices reveal character, values, and wisdom. The Bible teaches that God not only provides, but also guides in how to manage well. And as this financial journey reaches its end, the path begins to open for the final conclusion that ties every warning together with purpose and clarity. After walking through so many warnings from Proverbs revealed by Solomon, it becomes impossible to ignore how the Bible transforms the way we view attitudes, decisions, and paths. Now, the real question is simple but profound. What will you do with all this? Will you keep living on autopilot, or will you apply this divine wisdom and rewrite your own biblical story with choices aligned with God? You already know which areas of your life need change, and this is the perfect moment to take the first step. And before you go, do this. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep growing spiritually and emotionally with content like this. There's already a video on the screen waiting for you. Choose the one that catches your attention and continue diving into a journey of transformation. Don't let wisdom pass you by. Click now and move on to the next chapter of your change.